10 Weird Types of Tourism. Number 10. Atomic tourism. This is a type of tourism that sprang up after the dawn of the atomic era. Curious tourists fascinated with the atomic era can visit places important to the history of the atomic age, places where significant incidents related to atomic power took place. There are museums that specialize in atomic weapons, but naturally the most visited sites are the actual places where atomic bombs were dropped or detonated. Needless to say, this means Hiroshima and Nagasaki are the two most visited places when it comes to atomic tourism. While you can learn every detail about the Chernobyl nuclear accident and its effect on those who lived and worked around the area of the Chernobyl Museum in Kiev, which is arguably the most visited museum of this kind of tourism. Before you decide to visit, however, it will be wise to arrange for a translator or local guide, since pretty much all of the exhibits are in Russian. Number 9. Tolkien tourism. Despite the astonishing success of the Lord of the Rings books and films, when we first heard about this specific type of tourism, we didn't know what to think. Sure, Lord of the Rings is a cultural and pop phenomenon with millions of fans and fanatics all over the world, but we could never imagine that it would become the reason for travelling and tourism. Tolkien tourism is about two things. On the one hand, dedicated and hardcore fan visits to the Lord of the Rings fictional planet, and on the other hand, visits to every site of importance mentioned in the films or books. New Zealand is the ultimate country of attraction because it was the main location of the film series by Peter Jackson. The two British hotspots for hardcore fan tourism are Oxford and Birmingham, where Tolkien tourists can contact the Tolkien Society and take in anything from artifacts to art, from libraries to pubs, anything, as long as it's related to Tolkien in any way possible. Number 8. Dark tourism. Dark tourism revolves around anything that has to do with death, disaster, tragedy, and in a few cases, even the afterlife. The locations where multiple deaths took place are high on the agenda of the tourists who follow this kind of tourism, and the historical value of the places where deaths occurred seems to matter a lot as well. Sites where mass suicides took place, and various castles, for some reason, seem to be among the most favoured spots. One of the most visited sites around the world is Romania's Ponari Castle, where Dracula lived and killed. Number 7. Drug tourism. Nowadays, the destinations for drug tourism are pretty well established, even mainstream. For personal use and the fun of the thing, the capital of drug tourism is Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where every year the infamous Dutch cannabis cafes attract a couple of million young people from around the world. If the thing is strictly about business and trade, Colombia comes first to mind. A highly popular destination, especially back in the 90s, used to be Goa in India, where the excessive use of drugs like ecstasy at the famous rave parties was a pop phenomenon. Despite the decline of this kind of tourism, India is still famous for drug tourism, especially in a place called Malana, where good quality Indian hashish is produced in large quantities. Number 6. Ghetto tourism. Ghetto tourism is probably the newest on this list. The term was used for the first time back in the mid-2000s. With the spread of hip-hop culture over the past 15 years, more and more people have become curious about the places where this specific genre of music and lifestyle began. In the past few years, the American ghettos of Detroit, New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles have become tourist spots, mostly because of young people interested in this specific lifestyle, graffiti, music, and clothing. At one time, the highlight of this kind of tourism used to be real Bronx tours, bus rides conducting tourists through some of the most notorious ghettos in New York City. But unfortunately for visitors, real Bronx tours ended just this year after local authorities and neighborhood residents complained of feeling insulted by the way their neighborhoods were portrayed. Number 5. Shark tourism. Well, the name says it all in this case, and in all honesty, you probably can't get a creepier or more dangerous type of tourism than this. Shark tourism is actually a subgenre of another type of tourism, ecotourism. It appeals to all those people who love sharks and their bloody jaws. Anything related to the great white shark, and other less harmful sharks, is what's on offer in these touristic experiences. Experienced divers and protective cages are must-haves for this adventurous kind of tourism. Despite the high professionalism and excellent organization of the professionals who operate shark tours, there have been a few accidents, and even some fatalities. Number 4. Halal tourism. Religious tourism is not new, and it's been practiced in various forms such as pilgrimages for centuries, and this new kind of religious tourism has been for years now one of the most popular types. But once you learn more about it, you will understand why only Muslims want to join. How would it sound to you if you had to spend your vacation without drinking any alcohol, without having any sex, and having to swim in separate swimming pools for men and women? Believe it or not, that's what halal tourism offers. And of course, if you like pork or if you're gay, don't even think about it. You could be killed for your sinful preferences. However, this specific type of tourism is kind of popular in specific Islamic nations such as Morocco and Turkey, which try to attract more and more Muslim tourists every year. We wish we could say that Muslims know better, but we're afraid that we can't say such a thing about halal tourism. Number 2, war tourism. Sometimes this is referred to as suicide tourism, and not unfairly so. The significant difference between this type of tourism and atomic or dark tourism is that, in this case, the tourist visits an active war zone to experience what it's like to be in the middle of bombs, bullets, and grenades. War tourists are often extreme sports lovers as well, and generally they are after adventures that give them big shots of adrenaline. There was a record high number of war tourists during the war in Afghanistan, as well as reported cases of visitors who lost their lives. For the more peaceful, less danger-seeking war tourists, there are groups that specialize in visiting inactive war zones, where things can be a little more relaxing for everybody involved. Number 2, fertility tourism. Maybe some will rush to connect this specific type of tourism with sex tourism, but they better think twice. Fertility tourism, or reproductive tourism, as it's also called, is completely legal and innocent. For that matter, it can be considered a subset of what is known as medical tourism. Thousands of couples every year, most from advanced countries, travel to find the perfect sperm donor. This type of tourism exists because some nations have liberal legal regulations about sperm donation or lower costs for the whole procedure, since costs differ dramatically from country to country. Various statistical studies seem to suggest that countries populated by tall, blonde, blue-eyed men are strongly favored over nations that don't have large numbers of men like this. Looks matter, after all. Number 1. Suicide tourism. Without a doubt, this is the most macabre type of tourism we could ever imagine, and unfortunately, in most cases, for these holidays, the airplane ticket is one way with no return. As the title suggests, suicide tourism is related to suicide and euthanasia. Most people who embark on these tours want to bring their lives to an end. Usually, they are either people with physical disabilities or patients suffering from emotional problems, such as clinical depression. Suicide tourism is mostly organized for large groups of people seeking destinations where euthanasia is permitted. The main goal of some people on suicide tours is to achieve the decriminalization of euthanasia in countries around the world, but there are also smaller groups seeking ideal scenic sites as places to end their lives. In the US, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco is one of the most popular. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button in the top right. Our channel has loads of other awesome videos just like this.